Within the last week, we thought that we had come to grips with the corruption of Clarence Thomas and his relationship with billionaire right-wing mega donor Harlan Crow. Turns out ProPublica was just getting started, because what they dropped in the last 24 hours is amazing. We're not talking about just gifts being given to Clarence Thomas over time and the donations to his wife, Ginny Thomas. No, direct transfers of money from a right-wing billionaire who has long-term designs on remaking the American judiciary to a sitting Supreme Court justice. Here is some amazing work by ProPublica. In 2014, one of Texas billionaire Harlan Crow's companies purchased a string of properties on a quiet residential street in Savannah, Georgia. I'm reading this at length because I love the way that they set the scene. It wasn't a marquee acquisition for the real estate magnate, just an old single-story home and 2 vacant lots down the road. What made it noteworthy were the people on the other side of the deal: Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and his relatives. And this is where it gets dirty, increasingly dirty in multiple layers. First of all, they paid $133,000, $133,363 to the 3 co-owners, one of which was Clarence Thomas, one was his mother, and the family of Thomas's late brother. But that wasn't all. After they paid that, as you're gonna find, large amount of money for this particular property, contractors began work on tens of thousands of dollars of improvements on the 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home, which looks out onto a patch of orange trees, very nice. The renovations included a carport, a repaired roof, and a new fence and gates, according to city permit records and blueprints. So they paid the $133,000 to buy it, Harlan Crow's company. Then they did what some people say is $36,000 in improvements. Here's the amazing thing. Harlan Crow, it turns out, doesn't live at that property. I know you're shocked. You probably thought that that's where the billionaire lived. No, you know who lives there? Clarence Thomas's mother. Still, to this day, lived in the house before the sale and has lived in the house, according to neighbors who talked to ProPublica, for the 9 years since then, which is, when you think about it, a little bit odd. That a billionaire has bought this property, put tons of money into the property, and apparently allowed the mother of a Supreme Court justice to live in this now improved property for years and years for free. But that's not all. Crow also bought the house immediately next door to Thomas's mother, which was owned by somebody else and had been known for parties and noise. They tore the house down. That's a nice little benefit for the mother of Clarence Thomas. Don't gotta worry about those parties anymore. Now, here's the, I guess, shocking thing. There are almost no regulations, ethical, disclosure-wise or otherwise, on Supreme Court justices. It turns out, though, he actually went so far that he found a way to trip over one of the few disclosure requirements, which is that when you sell real estate over $1,000, you do actually have to disclose that. He never disclosed the sale of the Savannah properties. There's a disclosure form actually that he did file that year for other stuff, and on that, it has a space to report the identity of buyers in any private transaction. That space is blank. I think we can all figure out why. So this right-wing billionaire paid what appears to be significantly more than the going market rate for a property of a family member of Clarence Thomas, partially owned by Clarence Thomas, put in a huge amount of money into approving it, removed other things in the area that then could be built up, and real estate developers have put a lot of money into building up that area, now making it a nicer neighborhood for Clarence Thomas's mom, and has allowed her to live there for literally years. If this seems corrupt, if this seems like bribery, if this seems like a massive issue, that's because it 100% is. Brett, what do you think?
Well, John, this is what friends do with friends. Friends buy, they don't expect anything in return, especially friends that show up after you're in a position of power and woo you and your family and give your friends just do this kind of stuff for you. And there should be no sacrifice made by someone who becomes a Supreme Court justice. There should be no recusals. There should be no sense of responsibility for anything but yourself. Good friends, the way you know a friend is that they buy your mom's house and kick out the neighbors next door, level that house if it was even remotely close to a nuisance, and put tens of thousands of dollars into renovations and kind of seemingly obfuscate who is actually doing it. That's just what friends do, John. Did you not watch the show Friends?
I thought that I had I mean, they did live in a really nice apartment. I thought that I understood
which
Friends.
belonged
I guess I've never
to Monica's grandmother. I think is the Lord to justify how they could live in that fancy apartment.
So he appears to have violated federal law. Will that matter? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it probably will, but it's like, you can't do this. This is insane. You're receiving a check from a billionaire. Like, you can't, like, can we have some expectation of ethics from amongst the singly most powerful people in our country who have lifetime appointments and the ability to rule on almost anything in American society?
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.